All right, so we have had episodes 3 and 4 released for The Last of Us Season 2. And just to recap my thoughts on episode 1 and 2, I felt like the show was off to a really great start. Just full warning to some of you, I'm a massive fan of Part 1 and Part 2. I think they're both masterpieces. And so I was really wondering how they were going to do Season 2, how they were going to do Part 2, how they were going to adopt it, because I really think that in this adaptation, you have to change quite a bit, just because this story works one way in a video game. It doesn't work quite as well in a TV show, and so I've been really curious how they were going to do it, and so far, I've been actually genuinely very thrilled with what they've done. They've addressed some of the concerns from the first season, even though there was very minor concerns, because all around people felt very positively about that first season. They've addressed some of that, and they've been handling the story extremely well. Arguably, and we won't know until it's said and done, maybe even better than the game did, which coming from me is high praise, because I think that the game is a total masterpiece. But I wanted to dive into some of my thoughts and walk through these 2 episodes with you. And so let's dive into these massive last 2 episodes, episodes 3 and 4. So starting off in episode 3, it's essentially a whole episode just mourning the death of Joel, giving the audience space, giving us space. And there's that beautiful scene that it opens with, where Tommy essentially gets to clean the body of Joel, and you can just see the pain in his eyes. And it was just a beautiful moment that I was really thankful. Again, there's so many moments like this that I'm thankful that the show gave us, that the game didn't really give us very many of, or it didn't let us sit in it for too long, which the showrunners argue you can't really do in a game because you need to move to the next thing. But it was great to have this moment with Tommy and Joel, and that line about Sarah, like it was like, oh, it just hits me right in the heartstrings. And then you move into seeing the trauma that Ellie's going through, that as soon as she wakes up, the thing that she still sees in her head is Joel. And she just lets out that scream, and man, my heart ached in a different way, that it ached for Tommy and it ached for Ellie, where you're like, man, the amount of trauma, the amount of pain that she feels, it's going to make what she does next make a lot of sense. And then that's when one of the biggest things that I was shocked by came into play, and that was 3 months later, that we had this massive time skip. Because in the game, they head off to go to Seattle right away, that Tommy essentially leaves, and then Ellie follows after him almost immediately after Joel dies. And here, because of what Ellie endured, she's not able to, that she has to stay in medical care, and that she has to get better. And Jackson also has to be rebuilt, which also kind of made sense, because when they did the big horde, I was like, ooh, why would Tommy ever leave Jackson during all of this? Because his entire city has been destroyed. I can't see any world, even if he does want to go and kill Abby, for him to leave and just leave his town, leave his kid, leave his wife with a city that's in shambles. And so I actually like that they did the 3 months later, and it gave it a little bit of a different flavor, and it was really interesting to see. And especially in that scene for Ellie when she's about to get let out and she's talking to Joel's therapist, when she says the line that your final moments with someone doesn't define your time with them, and then the therapist says it shouldn't, but it often does. And that right there, one, you see Ellie lying all throughout this episode, but that right there is a lie. You can tell, and we know because we know the story, that her final moments with Joel, currently at the very least, they shouldn't define her relationship with him, but currently they are, because of how she pushed him away, because of how she essentially pushed away any relationship with him. She has an incredible amount of guilt, and she needs to take out this guilt and take out this trauma on the person who she feels like is responsible for it. And then we get that beautiful scene from the game, where we got to go to Joel's house, and they recreate it really, really well here. I really love how the showrunners talked about the watch, and when Ellie looks at the watch, she kind of looks at it and puts it aside, because to her the watch doesn't mean anything. To Joel it meant a lot, but to her it doesn't mean much, because it's the watch Sarah gave Joel, and she never knew Sarah. But what means a lot to her is the gun, because that's how Joel saved her throughout the entire first season, was with that gun, and now she's going to use it to kill Abby. And then you get that beautiful scene of her smelling Joel's jacket, and just the pain and grief, and the way that they depict loss is so accurate to what many people go through when they lose someone that they love. And then they go into this kind of town meeting, if you will, about what they should do, and Ellie's going to bring up, hey, we need to get a group of people and we need to go and kill these people, which makes sense as what logically would happen if something like this happened. You think about The Walking Dead. It's not like if Negan shows up and kills Glenn. It's not like Maggie is the only one saying, hey, I need to go and kill Negan all by myself and I'm going off, that she of course would take the entire crew with her to go and make sure they get the job done with Negan. In a similar way, it would make sense that Ellie isn't just like, let me go alone, but instead is like, let's take a crew. And so she kind of needs to make this speech that is total BS. When she makes it, you're like, she does not believe any of this. This is not about community. This is not about standing up for our rights. This isn't about protecting one another. This is simply about getting justice, dealing with the trauma Ellie has, and trying to appease the guilt that she feels for what happened with Joel. And what's incredible and what I loved about this, and what I love about this season so far, is then they show a different side to Seth. That they continually show you in this TV show that people are so much more complicated than just black and white. And so Seth in the game was just someone you encountered really briefly. He was a bigot. He was a jerk. Don't like him. Joel pushes him. All that stuff. You just kind of move on. Here they make him complex because all that happened. But then the one person who stands up for Joel in this whole meeting is Seth, and he stands up and says essentially like, what the heck are you guys doing? We've got to go and kill these people. They killed Joel with vengeance. This isn't just like a horde of clickers coming in. This is a whole different thing, and we need to go and kill these people and seek vengeance and seek justice. And if we don't do that, what good are we? And that speech was so cool. And it was a contrast to Ellie's speech, where Ellie's speech, I didn't buy it for a second. It was kind of weak. It would have worked for the town, but it really was like, she does not feel this at all in her bones. This is just her saying words. And even Joel's counselor and Tommy both kind of call it, where Joel's counselor, I think, rolls her eyes in that scene. And then Tommy also afterwards, was when they had that conversation, was like, oh yeah, that speech was total BS. They both say that together. And of course, she only gets 3 votes from the town council, who I assume was Tommy, Jesse, and Maria. And so it gets shut down. So then, of course, she's going to do what she did in the game. She's going to take matters into her own hands. She is going to leave. And what I want to say about both of these episodes, the actress who plays Dena is absolutely incredible. That all of the actors do an incredible job in this show, but every scene that Dena is in, she steals. And over these 2 episodes, she shines so much, where she is so likable. She just has great line delivery, great chemistry. She is incredible and is one of the best castings that they've ever done, where she actually is turning into probably my favorite character in the show right now. And so then she shows up and has a conversation with Ellie and is like, yeah, I know that you're going to leave, but you're kind of dumb and you need me because I've thought this thing through. We need to find all these different things to make sure that this trip is essentially successful. And then she gets help from somebody on the inside, and that person on the inside again is Seth. That the Seth arc is so cool, that the one who helps Ellie and Dena go off to venge for Joel is Seth, and he equips them and he takes care of them and he sets them off. And then him and Ellie have that great moment where they have the handshake, where you can tell she doesn't want to, but she's like, all right, you know what? I'll shake your hand. Like, thanks for doing this. And then they move forward. And what I really like in this episode too is, after this, the slow burn that they've chose to do with Dena and Ellie, where in the game their romance is rushed almost immediately, which was fine, but wasn't as realistic. Where here, I just love how they're setting it up, where they're not rushing into it. They didn't have that like winter getaway scene. They're not just immediately together. That it's just kind of like a slow burn. If you see some flirting, you see some prodding, you see some confusion of like, do they like me? Do they not like me? I can't tell. And I actually really like the way that they've handled their relationship over the last several episodes. And then we get the glimpse of the wolf threat, where we get that great scene of the scars, and then we get to see what's happened to the scars as a result, where you're like, ooh, these people seem like monsters, not the scars, but the wolves, which us as the audience knows, like, it's a little bit more complicated than just that. But these other people are pretty crazy. In the moment we get the little glimpse, sorry, full spoilers if you haven't read the title, where Dena's pregnant, where she goes off and she kind of pukes and comes back. And what's really crazy is that you see that the wolves killed the kid. I don't know if that was in the game. I'm sure it was implied, but you see that they killed the kid, where you're like, man, that's rough. There are no winners in war. And then you get kind of the end where they're like, well, it'll only be a few people. We'll be able to take them out. And then you get that last shot of a massive army, and that Dena and Ellie have no idea what they're in for. And so that episode was just masterfully done. I really love it. I love the space they give to Joel. I love all the little different character arcs, the things that they're setting up in the future. And then it leads us into episode 4. Starts off with Josh Peck, who is a wolf, in a military vehicle with Isaac, and they they're not wolves. They're actually working for Fedra, which is really interesting that we get a little bit of Isaac's backstory. And Isaac was one of those characters in The Last of Us Part 2 that you feel like, due to length, was left on the cutting room floor, but seemed so interesting. And what I love about this show is they always keep expanding the world. And so I love to get that little glimpse into Isaac where you're like, ooh, he used to work for Fedra. Okay, that's pretty interesting. And then you get that scene where he partners up with the wolves, and he goes out and essentially pretends to go and confront them. And then when they're like, yep, I'm Isaac, you're the wolves, we're partnering together, now I'm going to kill all these people. And so he throws the grenades into the Fedra chalk. He kills his entire military team, except for the one guy who seemed to show some compassion for people. I think they called them the voters, mockingly, because they actually can't vote, and it was like martial law, and it was like a way to mock the citizens. And so he lets that person live. And you see kind of the origin of Isaac and what he's going to become, which was really sweet. And then we continue with the episode. We continue with Dena and Ellie's journey into Seattle, and we get the great ABBA scene that's really infamous from the game, of that moment where Ellie picks up the guitar and we get to sing it. And I want to say Bella Ramsey crushes it, that she did a really great job, that she can sing really well, and it really felt like Ellie. And that's one thing I've actually felt, especially in this episode and in the episode before. I was always concerned that Bella would seem really too young still, because she does have a very young face. She's kind of like Tom Holland. But I actually, multiple times throughout, especially this episode, would catch glimpses of her and be like, oh yeah, that's Ellie. That's 19-year-old Ellie. I know that there are some fans who still push back and are like, she looks way too young. And what I would say is, I don't think most of you know what a 19-year-old looks like. Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2 video game probably looks like she's 28. Doesn't actually look like she's 19, where I don't think people are always compute how young a 19-year-old actually looks like, where both Bella Ramsey and the actress who played Dena look like people who are 19. People who are 19 are like fresh out of high school. Like they don't look as old as people think they do. And so I actually thought that even just her look in this episode really was really well done. And I've been actually very impressed by her and how she's been playing off an older Ellie. But then to continue, we get that great torture scene with Isaac, where he's torturing that scar, and it is so dark and so brutal. And you just see, you get to see how creepy the scars are, where initially in this scene you can think like, man, these wolves, they're messed up. Isaac's a messed up dude. This thing is crazy. And then you start to hear him conversing with the scar, and you're like, ooh, these people seem kind of nuts. And then you're like, ooh, they train their kids essentially to be soldiers to kill wolves, and that the wolves don't want to kill kids, but they essentially create child soldiers. And you're like, ooh, that's not good. but then also what Isaac's doing isn't good, that he's essentially just torturing people brutally to get information. And then when he realizes that this guy in particular is just going to let himself be tortured, he's never going to give anything up, he just kills him. He's no longer of use to him. And again, I just love that backstory to Isaac. I think he is a very interesting character, and Jeffrey Wright is an incredible actor, and so I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing even more from him, because I find that character so compelling and interesting. And Jeffrey Wright, anything he does is incredible. And so this extra stuff is always so intriguing to me. But then, and I was really happy to see this, we got the infamous hanging scene where people kind of go, where Ellie and Dena go into, I think it's like a radio tower. And I remember in the game that this was a part when I first played the game where my stomach like hit the floor. When you walk into this building and you see all of these bodies strung up and their guts sliced open and dangling out, and you see written on the wall, "Feel her love" in their blood. Like, it's a really creepy scene where you're like, whoa, like I feel really disturbed that this is really messed up. And Dena and Ellie, which I love, because I don't think Ellie ever pieced together or cared much about the scars, and it didn't seem like they really pieced together how intense all the things were that they were doing. And I like that in the show that they did, and they went, ooh, the people that we ran into on the road, they did this, and they seem maybe even more messed up than the wolves are. And again, Dena throws up, paying homage to that. She's pregnant, and even at one point she finds, obviously, some pregnancy tests, which I kind of knew right away, but I knew that for viewers who maybe hadn't played the game were like, what did she grab? Why is she being so secretive? But yeah, that scene, they did such justice. And then the action in that scene, it was the first time in watching this show that it felt like gameplay. That the same feeling you get, and the same feeling that I've gotten in playing The Last of Us Part 2, specifically in that scene, and in going after the wolves that show up, that they actually conveyed that incredibly well. And also the set. Dude, the sets in this show, it looks identical to the game. That I've played that game so many times, and at points I'm like, this is literally just the exact same set from the game. That's so cool that they've done that. But yeah, that action scene was incredible. And to see Bella Ramsey fight, and to see how this version of Ellie fights, because she's a bit smaller. The other Ellie in the game is also smaller, where she's not like Abby or like Joel. But to see that she has to essentially use martial arts to attack people, and she does, and she's actually pretty successful at it. But that scene was so good, where it genuinely felt like gameplay. And it was really well done. And then they run away, and then they go into the tunnels, they go into the subway trying to escape from the wolves. And again, just kudos to the set designers and the people who have that attention to detail, that again, it's identical to what we saw in the game. And one of the coolest set pieces, where you've got the glowing red and just all that different stuff, but then you see the tendrils come up again, which I'm very thankful for, that they continue to use that, because again, in the first season it was only used once in one episode, in the episode it was brought up. And so you see this horde get triggered from them throwing the flares, and essentially a massive amount of infected show up, are taken out. The wolves, Ellie and Dena need to escape in a really, really, really tense scene that I really loved. That them trying to get through the subway train was really well done. It was very tense. I was really, really impressed. And as they escape from the train, they're running up the stairs. They're trying to bust through kind of the entrance door, the little spinny thing, and then of course Dena's behind Ellie, and infected runs up to Dena, goes to bite her. And I was wondering how they were going to do this, because originally in the game they have the spores, right, which I want to talk about at the end, are apparently going to be coming up in the next episode, but you don't have spores, you don't have gas masks. And so in the game, Ellie's gas mask gets cracked, and so that's how Dena finds out that Ellie's immune. And I was wondering what they were going to do here, and so I really love what they did, where Ellie actually steps in to defend Dena because she knows she's immune. She chooses to let herself get bit so that Dena does not, and that they're able to escape. But obviously Dena in that moment is like, oh my goodness, what is going on? And you can see it on her face. and then they run into the theater, which made me excited and terrified all at the same time. We're like, no, not the theater. Couldn't we go somewhere else? I've got such bad memories with this theater where you just know what's coming. And you're like, oh my goodness. And so they go in there. They seal off the door like they do in the game. And then Dena, which she never did. I don't remember this in the second game where she wasn't adamant of like, you're infected. I need to kill you. I need to put you down. Don't try to justify this. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I need to kill you. That it was really cool to see that, because that's a reaction somebody would have in that you wouldn't be like, let me waste time trying to converse about this. It's like, no, and you're not immune. I don't care what kind of story you have. I have to kill you. And essentially Ellie's like, listen, I am immune. I'm telling you the truth. I'm going to go sleep over here. You can stay up and watch me. And if I twitch, you can shoot me. But it's not going to happen that I am immune. And now you know. So there you go. Essentially, the night passes. It turns out, yes, Ellie is in fact immune. And so in that moment, it kind of clicks for Dena of like, dang, I've learned Ellie's biggest secret. And then you see that Dena finally is like, I'm going to tell you my current biggest secret, which is that I'm pregnant, which I love that here. It's not just I think I'm pregnant, because in the game she never took a pregnancy test, where here she took like 5. It said, no, I am pregnant. That is the thing. And then immediately, and again, the slow burn romance, I feel like it finally pays off. We're like, actually, yep, that feels like the right moment where they would be like, yep, we're together now. And so then that happens, and they then wake up, and everything seems happy clappy. Everything's good. They're all together. We're having a baby. Jesse's also having a baby. That's a weird thing, which again makes me feel really heavy of being like, yeah, he might not be having a baby. And the episode kind of ends with them being like, running out, hearing all these explosions, seeing this giant war going on. Ellie's like, I'm gonna go face it. I'm gonna go find the wolves. That's where they are. All the explosions and the fighting and whatever. Dena, you should stay behind because you're pregnant and things are different now. And Dena does something that she didn't do in the game, where she then is like, no, I'm going with you. We're doing this thing together. In the episode ends, and man, what a phenomenal 2 episodes. What a phenomenal 4 episodes. They have been hitting this thing out of the park. They have been adapting this so incredibly well. Even things that I actually like more. I like that Ellie doesn't kind of get emotional and somewhat seemingly angry at Dena for being pregnant. That she more gets excited about it is interesting. It's just a different take where I was like, I like that. It's almost like watching a different universe of The Last of Us, where if you imagine a multiverse, this is like a different version of those characters, and it's really interesting to see how these characters are a little bit different in this universe. And so I always find that really cool. I find the expanded lore so interesting and so exciting as a big fan of The Last of Us, seeing all of that Isaac stuff and all of the even the Seth stuff, to be like, oh, that's really cool to see. And then this next week's episode, I think it's going to be crazy, where you have them going after Nora, and you have what appears to be the first appearance of spores, which they've kind of talked about how the virus is adapting to try to stay alive, that the fungus is adapting, and so spores are finally going to come into play, which gets me very excited as a fan, because as much as the tendrils is a cool idea, the spores are iconic, and so I'm really wondering how this comes into play. How does Ellie keep Dena safe from the spores, because they don't carry around gas masks, so how's that going to happen? Are the spores where the Rat King is? And if so, how is Abby not going to get infected? All these just different questions that I'm looking forward to getting answered. But again, the show's been doing an incredible job. I've loved every second of it. But I want to know what you guys think. So head down to the comment section down below and let me know your thoughts. Have you been enjoying this adaptation? Have you been enjoying this season so far? What did you think of episodes 3 and 4? What did you think of Seth's arc and us seeing some of that? Were you excited to see a little bit of Isaac's backstory? And yeah, how do you feel like they've been adapting this? Do you agree with me that Bella Ramsey's really stepping into that role of an older Ellie, or do you still not feel convinced? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that junk, and I will see you guys in the next one.